Today, I join you from the shore. Looks like there's quite a storm rolling in. So let's jump right in. So collusion, as you may recall from earlier lectures, occurs when firms agree to act together to raise profits by charging high prices. For two firms in the market, they would agree to somehow split the monopoly quantity. And then you get the same outcomes as a monopoly market. You get monopoly prices, the two firms split the monopoly profits, there's the monopoly deadweight loss, consumers pay high prices, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I want to take a look closer at this graph again. This is the graph that we looked at in the last class. We had the two reaction functions shown on this graph. So on the vertical axis, we have the quantity produced by firm 2. On the horizontal axis, we have the quantity produced by firm 1. You might recall that if you choose a particular quantity for firm 2, let's say the quantity that corresponds to the height of the mouse right now, if you were to trace that over horizontally till the firm 1's reaction function, the horizontal distance of that point on the reaction function gives the amount that firm 1 would want to produce in response to maximize their profits. Similarly, if we look at some point that firm 1 produces over here, we could trace that up vertically to firm 2's reaction function, and the height of that point gives the amount that firm 2 would want to produce to maximize its profits in response. Right? Now, as you may recall, the equilibrium under a Cournot duopoly is given by the intersection of the two firms' reaction functions. Right? So what happens under a collusive agreement? Well, the sum of the quantities produced are equal to the monopoly quantity. Okay? And so the collusive quantities are given by this red line. And any point on this line represents a set of quantities for firm 1 and firm 2 that sum to the monopoly quantity. So this point here does, you move further down, this point here does, maybe this is sort of splitting the quantity. This point here involves firm 1 producing more than firm 2, but still the sum is the monopoly quantity. You can actually see that if you assume that goods are infinitely divisible, so you can produce fractional quantities, and there's actually an infinite number of points on this line, right? There's an infinite number of different ways that firms that are colluding could split the monopoly quantity and therefore split the monopoly profits. Okay, so how do they agree on sort of which one to do? Actually communicating and explicitly agreeing is illegal and can get their executives thrown in jail. If they can't explicitly talk, then they need to agree on which of these potential collusive quantities, which way to split the monopoly quantities they're going to choose under collusion without actually talking to each other. Well, I think that the answer might be, and this is what is often sort of suggested, is focusing on, well, a focal point. So let me give an example. So think about this question for a second. Okay? Suppose you and one other person in this class are playing a game. Each of you separately and without knowing what the other did, so you select one of the 3 balls depicted in this picture. If you select different balls, then both of you get nothing. But if you both select the same one, then both of you get $10. Okay? So the question is, which would you choose? Your goal here is merely to choose the same one as the other student who you're unable to communicate with. Pause the video. Think about it for as long as you want to, quite frankly. And then once you think you have the answer or are ready to proceed, just unpause the video. So what typically happens is that the vast majority of students answer 6. That's what I've seen in the past. And I think that actually does make a lot of sense. It's a focal point, right? So what does a focal point mean? It means that there's something like unique about it. So even though you're not able to communicate, you both converge on the same focal point. So, all 3 of these balls have different numbers. Okay, so that doesn't really help you figure out which one is unique. They all have the same shape. They all are the same size. The only difference I can really see here is one of them is red. The number 6 ball is red. And so if you're trying to somehow sort of, without talking to each other, agree on a ball, you might want to pick the one that's unique. Okay, so there's other examples of how you might sort of form a focal point that might be more relevant for the question at hand. How do you get 2 firms to collude? One way that you might do that is you might think that a fair outcome is a focal point. Okay? So you might think that if firms are trying to collude without actually speaking with each other, one way they might do that is to split the monopoly quantity. If we go back to this graph here, it would be sort of the middle point along the collusion curve.